Perfect. So I want to kick things off by saying welcome to another MassMEDIC virtual event. We are absolutely thrilled to have you joining us. I'm Rachel Robinson, Chief Operating Officer at MassMEDIC, and it's a pleasure to be back and doing this again with you all. It's been a while since I've done a virtual program, so I hope you'll forgive me any flubbing this morning. But we are absolutely thrilled to be partnering on this webinar with PDE and a number of their members. It is obviously something that is of great import and interest to a lot of us in the audience. You know, the challenge around workforce and talent retention and hiring has been, I would say, top of mind for a lot of companies for the last year. Things are rapidly shifting and changing in the environment, which is always a bit of a struggle, but also can be seen as an opportunity. So I hope we're going to dive a lot into that today. So just a few logistics notes for you. We absolutely encourage a lively discussion and questions. So you can absolutely pop your questions into the Q&A portion at the bottom of your screen. If you're not familiar with that, just take a look at the bottom of the screen to find it. You can also raise your hand if you'd like to ask live questions. I think we absolutely encourage that as well. We've planned about an hour for this discussion. I think we budgeted out about 90 minutes in the time frames in case there's questions, but if we're done in an hour, we'll get you out of here early and back to your day. But we'd really love this to be as lively and encouraging as possible. So please, please, please ask questions, pop scenarios into the chat, and let us know what's top of mind for you. So with that, I'm going to kick things over to Dean from PDE so that he can welcome everyone to the event and tell you a little bit about what PDE is doing.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending this. My name is Dean Deniseni. I'm the newly elected president of the PDE. I've taken over for Teddy Frayne. Basically, the PDE is the longest running active trade organization in the country, established in 1861. It's dedicated to the advancement of its membership by providing, a forum for interaction, communication, and education. Our membership includes pharmaceutical manufacturers, their allied trade partners, allied trade industries, and schools of pharmacy. We basically focus on the topics of value across all the primary functions groups such as regulatory, HR, supply chain, engineering, packaging, sales, marketing, operations, and finance. With that being said, we do try a lot of different things throughout the year, including virtual panels. We do happy hours, we do golf outings. This year, we're actually going to go to a minor league baseball game in April. So we encourage you to attend these different functions. We are trying different things to try and draw in younger people to be involved in this organization, since we feel this is a very good organization to be a part of. So please, keep your eyes and ears open for future, notifications from the PDE. Well, that being said, our moderator for today is Susan Stipa. She has done many of these for us before. She's great at it. She's also newly on our board as treasurer. So we thank her for her dedication and volunteerism for that. She has 30 years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry. First, she was, I think, a process chemical engineer with Roche, and she continues today as EVP Public Relations for one of the top life science communication firms in the country, CG Life. So what I'll do now is I'll pass it over to Susan, and we can begin our panel discussion.
Thank you very much, Dean. So we'll have some slides up for a little while as each panelist does a brief introduction of themselves. And then you'll be able to see our lovely faces when we actually begin the conversation. So I put this slide up to kind of set the stage for the discussion. We hear every day from our member companies, and I am sure all of you hear from colleagues in every size industry. They're facing unprecedented challenges trying to find enough workers to fill open jobs. And I did a little digging, and right now, just a few days ago, the latest data shows that we have over 10 million job openings just here in the US. And there are 5.7 million unemployed workers. So bit of a discrepancy here. We have a lot of jobs open and not enough workers to fill them. In fact, if every unemployed person in the country found a job, which we know is totally unrealistic, we'd still have 4 million open jobs. And then there's the pandemic causing this major disruption in America's labor force. I mean, something many of us have come to refer to as the Great Resignation. In 2021 into 2022, more than 47 million workers quit their jobs. many of them in search of improved work-life balance, flexibility, increased comp, and perhaps a stronger company culture. All of these subjects are going to come into play today with our esteemed group of panelists here. And we're going to have each of these panelists, starting with Azzur Group, and then West Pharmaceutical, and then Unipak, introduce themselves briefly and their companies. And then we're going to share some pretty intimate stories about the struggles they've had and continue with our Q&A. So let's get going. And I'd be very glad to introduce Ray Jaffe from Azzur Group, whose face you will see very shortly.
All right, well, thank you. And thanks for having me on the panel. So yes, I'm with Azzur Group. I am the Vice President of Operations, Shared Services. So a lot of the back office functions, legal, HR, recruiting, talent acquisition among them. So Azzur, just real quick overview, is a national life science support organization. You can see here we have offices across the United States. Domestically, we are at 600 employees or hovering right around there. So we've had a really rapid growth the last few years. So that's been exciting, but also as we'll talk about, leads to a lot of challenges. Retention is one thing, and then doing it in a growing organization is even trickier. So just a couple of on the next slide, a few of the areas that we focus on. You can see here some of the specialties, but the four I'll call out are our main business units. We have a consulting group that has, like the previous map showed, offices across the country. So we see regional challenges as well as national challenges. We have laboratories also spread out across the country. We have a training center in Raleigh, North Carolina, that we do some life science compliance training. And then finally, our clean rooms on demand, which is a newer division, but a division that's growing really rapidly, which offers clean room services to organizations that may need some more flexibility, maybe more time sensitivity. So we have a bunch of different business units, and which leads to different types of challenges across the workforce. And I'm looking forward to talking about those with the group.
Thank you, Ray. And next, I'd like to introduce Daria Miller from West Pharmaceuticals.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. So I am Daria Miller. I am the director of our North American technical support team at West Pharmaceutical Services. So West is a global leader in containment and delivery of injectable medicines. West offers vial containment and syringe components, administration and reconstitution systems for injectable drugs, and self-injection and wearable drug delivery systems. Our mission is to contain and deliver injectable therapies and improve patients' lives. And our core values really focus on our passion for our customers, our leadership and quality, and our One West team. West has over 26 manufacturing sites globally, producing nearly 45 billion components each year. We have over 10,000 employees currently employed globally around within the West organization. So not only is West working in a field in the healthcare industry, in a field that is supporting the pharmaceutical industry, right? But we also want to go and practice what we preach. And what I mean by that is, one, we as a company are really proud of the impact that we have on people's lives. We're making a product that has a direct impact, can make their lives better. But we also want to go and recognize that we feel really fortunate that the communities that we have our facilities in have welcomed us, right? And we want to pay them back as well. We want to show that we care just as much for them as we do about the products we're producing globally. So philanthropy is a very big part of the culture at West. In fact, honestly, that was one of the reasons that I was drawn to come work with West, just this nature of giving back. Like I said, we are dedicated, and when we choose our philanthropy work, we try to do it locally. So I'm located in the Philadelphia area, about in the suburbs of Philadelphia. So what we do is we have a program called West Without Borders, which is our employee-led giving program. We've donated more than $4 million since its inception, and we focus on charities within our own area. So we do have an annual food drive. We donate to the food banks in our local area. For me, like I said, we're in the Philadelphia area. Each year, our West Without Borders campaign, we typically partner with Fox Chase Cancer Center, and then we often will choose a second charity as well. And we have quite a few things that we operate within our company. We'll do a bingo, right? You'll go and pay maybe like $15, you get 3 cards. You know, we can do it virtually and you win prizes, but all that money gets donated into the charities. There's other fun activities that we encourage as well. So like I said, locally, we've done Fox Chase, we've done Alex's Lemonade Stand, which is something really that, you know, has taken a root across the country as well. And we've done Crayons to Crowns, and they're just a few of the programs that we support. To give you a little bit of background about myself, I have been with West Pharmaceutical Company for 5 years, all right? I started out in the support team, and then after 18 months ago, I moved into my current role leading the team. What I've done in my previous role within West is I've supported customers in our biologics, pharmaceutical, and generics market. But that background allowed me to go and move forward to lead this team and to go and mentor those that are on my team currently. Previous to working at West, I started my career with a plastics compounder, so I have a background in material sciences, and I also have a background in chemistry. I'm degreed in chemistry. So I also then took a little bit of a detour after that and decided to go into that teaching field, teaching both at the college and high school levels. So what's really great about my current position is that I'm able to go and really take all those experiences and just apply them to what I'm doing now. As a team leader, I continue to mentor and work with people and develop and educate from the supporting our customers perspective. Education is part of that process as well, because we do have quite a few customers that just need, you know, a little guidance and a little help as well. So I'm really excited to be able to work with West in this capacity.
Well, thank you. I was jotting down quite a number of questions that will be great for the rest of the panel. So thank you, Daria.
Thank you.
Our third panelist is Dan Pandoli from Unipak. And Dan, why don't you give us a little background on Unipak?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dan Pandoli. I am the General Manager at Unipak in Westchester, Pennsylvania. We are a folding carton manufacturer and been in business in Westchester for a little over 50 years. We are a unique, more boutique folding carton company who can take a project from design to eventually the retail shelf or the manufacturer shelf. We service a wide range of industries. We do health and beauty, candy, confectionery, medical, dental, pharma, and also food and retail. Pretty much anything that can go into a folding carton, we can design and manufacture. And that's it for Unipak.
All right. Well, Maureen, we can probably take the slides down and get started with the fun part of today. So what I'm really fascinated about, actually, Rachel, do you want to talk a little bit about MassMEDIC for some of the participants who might not have a background in your really great company?
Sure. It's quick. So MassMEDIC is a 26-year-old trade association. We represent over 350 medical device companies, mostly based in New England, but we have a number of companies stretched around the country internationally as well. So we are an advocacy group. So we advocate for medical device companies. So I'm excited to kind of bring some of the learnings and chat coming into the conversations we've been having with companies recently into this discussion.
So we've got this wide range of companies today. We have Azzur Group, which is not, had its roots maybe in the consulting world and now has this amazing clean rooms on demand. We've got a representative from medical device. We've got West and their complete, injectable product right to patients. We've got somebody that supplies everything that we package up and gets us actually, bringing it to patients in retail and pharma itself. So all of these mean we've got a ton of different kinds of employees. So I think what would make this a little more personal is, if you don't mind, panelists, would you share a particular challenge you've had in the labor market this year, last year, or even if we were to go so far back as the start of the pandemic? Tell us a story, and then we'll go off of that and figure out how we all have addressed these situations. Who wants to start?
I'll jump in. I usually do. Anyway, so what's kind of unique about my situation is the team that I'm currently leading. When I was just a member of that team, we were a team of 6 members. And then the team grew to 9. But here's the interesting thing. At the start, around the start of the pandemic, we started having team members move into other roles within West. So for me personally, I've had in the last 2 years had to onboard, it was a period of 18 months. I went and onboarded 9 new people.
Wow.
So everybody that sits on my team currently is new to West. So that was quite challenging from the perspective of recruiting talent, but also onboarding in a new type of learning environment, that virtual environment. So we had to revamp some of our training programs and think about how could we convey and bring them up to speed so that they could, perform the job. Just to give you a little background, our training program for the group that I'm in is a 3-month-long training program. And that's before we will actually go and have our new employees take over account responsibilities and interface with customers. So
Wow.
it's a pretty intensive challenge. So yeah, that was
Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I do want to circle back on that in a few minutes and ask you how you found all of those new people. But Dan, Ray, tell us one of your biggest challenges from a labor perspective in the last 12 to 18.
I'll go. I've been with Unipak a little more than 3 years. First 18 months with the company, our retention was awesome. We didn't replace anyone inside the company. Once COVID hit and started heading into that, we were deemed essential for the work we do. And at that point, it seemed like people didn't want to work anymore. Since then, retaining employees has been very difficult. They're not through. We've realized that on some of the job sites that we use as clickbait, that employees will apply for the job, not return phone calls because they're using that to retain unemployment and continuing unemployment. So we've kind of learned the different angles that people are using not to work, more than we're finding out angles for people wanting to work.
And Dan, what kind of jobs are we talking about?
Labor positions, working on pieces of equipment. Some of it is skilled labor. It's all different positions throughout the company.
Okay.
Still trying to find salespeople, very difficult to find.
Mm-hmm.
The demands that we get for people who eventually do and will interview is amazing. It's a unique time right now.
Ray, what are you faced with over at Azzur?
Yeah, a little of what, well, a lot of what Daria was also mentioning is with rapid growth comes the need to find and identify a lot of employees. So there's a lot of effort into talent acquisition right now, but I would jump back, and I've been at Azzur for just a year, and I've with some really large organizations before that, and I think one of the things that is a little bit of a challenge, I don't know if it's a specific story, but a little bit of a challenge is building back the sense of connectivity people feel like they have to the company with, the time through COVID and not being in the office, and that sort of intangible has been a challenge, both where I have been and even with Azzur. I had one colleague tell me when I started, he spent his first 18 months and saw nobody, almost, right, face to face. So how do you build back that camaraderie, that sense of belonging, that hopefully for different companies can sort of help balance or outweigh just maybe straight dollars and cents as far as keeping people sticky to your organization. So I think figuring out ways to build back that connectivity has been a big challenge.
Yeah, I mean, company culture is something that every company has, but if most of that has happened through the connectivity, we used to call it water cooler conversations, and that kind of feel when people were in person, what have your organizations been transitioning towards to convey this, whatever your company culture might be, to convey that? Daria, you touched on one way, which is really emphasizing the philanthropy that the company is involved in. I heard training as well, and trying to highlight that, hey, we got you, we'll train you. But what are some of the other ways virtually that your companies are doing to convey this new age of company culture? And Rachel, please pipe in, because you hear from an awful lot of companies as well.
I have so many comments, but I will try to keep them short. So just a high level, what I think is really interesting, I was at a Massachusetts Hospital Association event last week, and they had Steve Cadigan, who's a speaker. He's a former VP of talent at LinkedIn. He's worked with a number of Fortune 500 companies. And one of the things he specifically mentioned about the current state of talent is that employees are more loyal to knowledge and learning than they are to companies.
Ooh, I love
so
that.
As much as you think company culture is going to be the thing that draws, it's in this generation of workers, it's more about how they're going to be educated, how they're going to be growing. And if you can look at workers and try to reimagine, take some of the models that have never worked in med tech and pharmaceutical, potentially looking at the McKinsey model of bringing people in saying, we know you're going to be here 1 to 3 years. This is the goal, 1 to 3 years. And then you're going to go do something else that's even better. And we're going to help prep you for that, because we want you to take us with you, because then we'll be your high paying client. If you think about it from the social media model, right? I think he mentioned Spotify. They have a 2-year max in their job roles for people. You are taking this job for 2 years, and then you're required to either move on to another company or move on to another role. So there's a constant stream of learning and training going on. Those models have never been things that worked in med tech and in pharmaceuticals, and especially in hospital. But if we can get a bigger picture perspective on those types of things and understand that people are more interested in their growth and not necessarily in their growth at your organization, how do you utilize what people have to offer in that time frame? So that's just one trend that I thought I'd maybe point out, and that we're seeing with our companies as well, is we've never seen so many different groups within an organization concerned about talent. I got a group of CFOs and heads of R&D together for what I thought was going to be a conversation around build versus buy, right? So these are top executives at medtech companies. We're going to talk about whether you want to build your own company or buy a company. Within 15 minutes, the conversation turned to, how are you attracting talent? How are you retaining people? How are you investing in people? And that has been the conversation for the last year. So I think you're seeing it engaging at a different level than it ever has been before with organizations, and that's good. And the focus has got to be on understanding what employees are looking for and how do you give it to them in a model that works for you.
And I'm fascinated by the implication that there's a level of acceptance that people will leave. How do we get them in the first place? How do we make that such a rich place that maybe they'd consider staying? And that implies also some difficulties for an industry that needs the residual institutional knowledge that, in Daria's case, they're spending 3 months training. So what else are your companies doing around this, either knowledge and learning, as Rachel just pointed out, or the cultural piece to connect people to a company virtually? Or in your case, Dan, that is not the case at all. People have to be there.
Correct. I do agree with Rachel. Developing training is key. I would much rather take someone who wants to learn and wants to move forward, even if it's to the point that 2 to 3 years down the line that they're moving on to something bigger and better. I think making that investment in employees is a better approach than just getting people, turning them over. The more you develop them, the more you can train them, the more they may stay. These people today, they do want to grow. They don't just want a job that they want to work at for 40 years. That theory has passed.
Yeah, I agree. And I was interested with some of Rachel's comments. I do think by business unit or industry type, there are expectations differ as well. Like we do have a consulting division, and yes, I mean, in some cases, attrition from the consulting division is wonderful because they go to a role where they can, continue the relationship. And so it's, in some cases, it's not a bad thing. It could be a good thing. But in other business lines, their hope is that there is a little bit more permanency, although I know it's more dynamic, the workplace. But the concern that I would have would be, if you make it so transactional, then it's really there is no long-term plan, right? If it's truly 2.5 years, here's the transaction, we give you this, you give us that. I think that alters potentially how you invest in your employees. So I think really being, and that's part of the communication, the upfront understanding is what truly is the employee expectation? Do they want to be there 10 years? Do they not want to be there 10 years? And then sort of tailoring towards that.
I love that. Daria.
Yeah, I do think that the key is to invest in your team members. You need to, the first year here, in my team is really all about learning. There's just so much knowledge they need to absorb. After that point in time, it's important to sit down with the employees and start discussing what are your goals, what are your interests, come up with a plan for them, a development plan, set up trainings for them, give them opportunities to work on different projects within the company that will allow them to grow their knowledge base. But again, it also might be fostering them to maybe move on to another position within the company. I want to keep members on my team. I invest a lot of time, training them. So I'm also a little selfish in that I'm going to make sure that some of their interests, right, will be a benefit to my team as well. And I can use that to grow them within our team, developing them as well. On a whole for my team, I like to do monthly internal trainings on different topics. And maybe it's not a training, maybe it's just an information system, something just to keep people up to speed on what's going on in the industry. I also like to give my team members the opportunity to actually do a training. What do you think your teammates would be interested in learning about? Giving them that responsibility, letting them feel that, you're putting your trust in their abilities and you want them to share what they've learned with everyone else. For me, it's all about, the employee and investing in them. From a cultural base, I can say, yeah, it's been difficult virtually. I think we've all seen that. West has had some functions where we've brought everybody in, obviously, when it was safe, right? In the recent year, we did have an on-site holiday party. What was interesting is we walked around and most of the people that were there were people that were there prior to COVID, right? Not necessarily maybe some of the newer ones. I know, so that's something that we need to work on, how to go and make these employees feel part of the team. I know that was something that came out of so many surveys, during the COVID time period when we were working at home. People were saying they just didn't feel connected. For me personally, for my team, I kind of went old school a little bit. I started bringing my team in on every Tuesday. And the reason I did that is so they could collaborate, they could share their knowledge, and also to create a sense of team. I really thought that was important. In the very first meeting that we had an all-day meeting. I know that sounds torturous, but it really wasn't, because the morning session was spent getting to know one another. I had broke people up in pairs. They interviewed one another, came back into the room, shared what they learned with the whole team, asked questions. We went out to lunch off-site. We came back, and then we started talking a little bit about, so what are the challenges that you faced working from home? You know, what are some of the challenges you faced in your job? And by investing in that initial getting to know one another, I've seen between that and bringing them in on Tuesdays, there's a new sense of camaraderie for my team that was not seen before. You know, we use team chats, we've had video meetings, but there's just something, the team really gelled very well together. They lunched together, they set up their own happy hours. You know, they're joking around now in the Teams chat that you really didn't see before. And I think the thing that our team is like most proud about, we're known as TCS. We started saying, okay, we're coming in on Tuesdays, it's TCS Tuesdays. And that phrase is kind of just taken just some light around the company. If different groups will say, oh, TCS is coming in on Tuesdays. Well, we're going to come in too, so we can get to know them. So this phrase TCS Tuesday is just kind of taken off in you know, in some of the areas. So
Well,
yeah,
kudos to you. Wes is lucky to have you, because it sounds like this kind of person-to-person, peer-to-peer, so it is critical, and you've enabled a peer-to-peer type connection that then just builds upon itself. How does that work in the manufacturing sector, Dan? Is that something you've used where, you know, those employees who have really started to shine, you're using those individuals to reach out?
Yes, we have. We are trying to take the approach of develop and train. If we think someone has potential, we would take potential over experience if we feel better about potential. It's a much different approach than what we've looked for in the past. You're looking for someone who's done a job for a long time, has the experience. Yeah, we're trying to take different approaches.
Ray, Rachel, I know you heard the Daria story. Anything occurred to you during that lovely story of connectivity and person-to-person retention?
No, I mean, I would just say that, yeah, I do think it's vital, you know, to build more, I would say more than a transactional relationship between, you know, the company and the employee. And it really is something that does need to be, you know, that's where you need great leaders and great managers, right? Because it needs to be localized. It's not something in organizations, certainly as organizations grow larger and larger, can really do for everybody. I mean, you can put programs in place, you can put, you know, a structure in place to try and support it, but ultimately it's up to people to create that connectivity. So I think it just needs to be clearly called out as a fundamental goal of the organization and a fundamental driver for people's behavior, a KPI for, you know, all the things that bake into making sure it stays in the forefront of someone's day-to-day work as a manager slash supervisor slash leader.
All right, I'm going to stir the pot a little bit because I like to do that. So one comment I'm going to make is, yes, company culture and connection is incredibly key, and you want it to be more than transactional right now. But how is the future workforce going to look at that? And as generational needs change, and as younger, you know, some of the statistics around how long people stay at their jobs that were shared last week, I think the average used to be 6 to 8 years was considered a reasonable tenure. Kids coming out of college now and new into the workforce look at it as 1 to 2 years, 1 to 3 years. That's just how they're viewing things. Steve told a story about his college age son getting his first job, and he was raving about it. And his dad's like, great, this is awesome. You found a great job. And the son says, yes, it'll be perfect for a year. And he goes, wait, what are you talking about? It'll be perfect for a year. You just said this was a great job. Well, yeah, but there's got to be something else out there. And those choices are only going to increase in the next decade, 2 decades, right? There's only going to be more options for people from a career path perspective. So we just need to be thinking a lot about not just playing defense, but playing offense as well. So just to chime in on the manufacturing comments, I absolutely agree that manufacturing especially is one of the hardest roles to fill. And that's what we're seeing from our members here in Massachusetts. Getting people to work on those lines, helping them understand what skilled labor is and what skilled technicians are, training them, getting them engaged. But some ways that we can kind of be playing offense as an industry is trying to take the stigma away from what it means to work in manufacturing, what it means to work on a production line. It's not the job that it was 30 years ago. There's incredible technology being used in manufacturing lines. There's incredible opportunities to grow and connect. There's incredible salaries, honestly, that can come out for high school students, folks with a 2-year technical degree, if you're willing to go and explore what these options are. So I think we need to be very proactive in taking away what the viewpoint has been of jobs where you don't necessarily need a 4-year degree, and be really upfront with folks and say, this is what you can do with your skill set, and we want to help make you as beneficial to the company as possible, but also as beneficial to the labor market as possible. One of the other things I heard mentioned this past week that was really interesting from one of our companies is front loading benefits. On, you know, instead of making people wait, the opportunity for people nowadays do not want delayed gratification, right? We're on our Netflix queue and we want to look at the 3,000 options, and oh, by the way, there's 3,000 more. We're going to keep surfing till we find the perfect one. So instead of bringing folks on and saying, okay, after a year, you get this much vacation, or you get this voucher for a training program outside of work, or you get this kind of reimbursement. What if you sat down with employees on day one and said, this is the max amount of vacation that we can afford to give you. This is your compensation. This is your training budget. We want you to have this from day one. You get to pick what classes you take and how it's interesting for you. But this is everything we can do now. Is this going to work for you? And see how it goes. It's not going to work for everybody, but it's a way to pilot something interesting.
Wow. Well, we said we hope everybody who's listening today gets 1 or 2 ideas that change the way they think about things. So we've heard a number of those. And in many cases, we've been talking about this. How do we keep the people we have? How do we accept the new reality of those that are coming in? I just looked at a resume yesterday. And since 2018, this young lady had 6 jobs. Now, that could indicate in my world, 10 years ago, that would have indicated an absolute no-go. But we're going to talk to her because the experience that she's showing, and perhaps, you know, we'll be able to determine that. But it was shocking for that millisecond. So I totally get that we're seeing more and more of that, and no shame in it. And do we just continue to complain about it, or do we do something to accept that this is what's happening right now?
Well,
Let's,
and
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to jump in. I to tag to that. Yes, like I think clearly, you know, attention spans are shorter. 24-hour news cycle. So I think there are probably some cases where someone goes into a job very intentionally thinking, I'm going to be here 2 years, I'm going to leave, and that's actually the goal. I think what happens just as often is, and a lot of these things around training, new opportunity, you're addressing boredom, right? You're addressing, you know, people get bored much quicker, I would say, than they used to. Things get stale much quicker than they used to. So yeah, how do you be dynamic and keep it fresh for them through these things we're talking about? But I think, you know, if you look at the root cause, it's probably boredom, right? I want something new. It's not like I want to come in and I have to check my box of leaving in 2 years. I want to check my box of being interested and entertained and challenged. And what you had said, Rachel, is interesting. It's not something we've done, but something floating around is, you know, maybe even look different than the, you know, annual increase or the, you know, you've been here 3-5 years, great job, here's your promotion. Much more iterative. And it doesn't even need to be much more money, but it's just this constant, like, yes, here's something else, here's something else, here's something else, and kind of try and keep up with those news cycles.
Yeah, talking about benefits, anybody else have interesting things that they've done with benefits to attract or retain people? We added a few things at CG Life, which was really nice, and it was definitely something that's constantly on our radar. Anybody else?
Unipak, we're a much smaller company than West and some of these other companies, but it's become negotiable benefits for us. The standard percentage cutoff we take into consideration. We will provide more for benefits depending on how badly we want the employee. Our 401k plan is now vested from day one. There's not a period where Unipak still owns some of the money. We try to be creative in all those aspects just to try to be appealing to people. We work with flexible start times, 3 different start times in the plan. As much, there's no set standards anymore. You can't have those views or visions. You'll alienate too many people. If we can get crews to start an hour earlier and we can man the machines and it works for everyone, for childcare, daycare, a wife working another position, we'll do it.
Wow.
And everyone's happy. And at that point, it kind of locks the employee in. Is the next person want to work with me that way? Will they for an hour adjusted start time or finish time to make things work?
And are you, do you have several shifts, Dan? So I would think operationally, the flexible start times could have been considered in the past an operational nightmare, but you've just figured out behind the scenes how to make it work?
We have 2 shifts and we're able to manipulate it to make it work for everyone.
That's amazing. Daria, benefits or flex time. Talk to me.
I think the key is flexibility. Yeah, we definitely became spoiled when we worked virtually, right? It wasn't, didn't have that office face time, knowing that people were leaving at 8 or coming in at 8 and leaving at 5 or, whatever the case may be. It's just something that our company has embraced. We've recognized that we can be successful by having people work virtually. So only those that need to be, there are certain jobs that have to be on site, right? And those jobs, each department deals accordingly. They've instituted some flexible start times and, at length of days and schedules. But it is going to be really dependent upon what the job is and, can that how far can we extend that flexibility? But the key behind the flexibility is really recognizing that life goes on outside of your company. So if you need to take your child to the doctor during, the day because they're sick, no one's going to question that you're not online for that period of time. I know for me, when my kids were growing up, I was in an office space. All right. And yes, it was, can I leave? Can I take them? And it was just that constant in my mind. What are they thinking? Is this going to put my career back? And you can think of a bunch of things, but now we're really embracing that flexibility piece to allow people to have a better work-life balance.
So the touchy question I'm going to throw into the pot here. So let's just talk a little bit about investments being made so that we don't need as much labor. These are things that change this kind of dynamic a little bit, but especially on the manufacturing floor, what's being done at a corporate level? What kind of discussions are you hearing or are you participating in that might alleviate the need for labor at all?
So, well, I'll chime in. For our group, it's I probably would have to draw more from my past. Azzur is a little bit more of a service-based organization. But in previous lives, absolutely, there was technology put in place to help OCR scan read documents to maybe skinning down a documentation department, credit approvals to automated credit decisioning. So I think constantly looking at automation and process improvements through technology is probably not new. I think that's probably been there for a while, maybe to the point the importance is growing. If it's just really challenging to find folks, maybe that pushes investment more into that area. But at least at Azzur, it's probably less of a hot topic just for the types of businesses that we run.
We certainly have a lot of clients using artificial intelligence, things like that, which is just an interesting thing to think about, because as companies are moving in that direction, and yet we're getting more personal in our hiring practices and retention practices, it's a really interesting push-pull. We haven't seen as much. I haven't seen as much about this dynamic. So just thought I'd throw it out there, especially in manufacturing settings.
I can
What we're
say,
hearing from members is, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that, I know at West, we're always looking at improving our processes, right? And some of those may be automated, but with automation comes a whole new skill set, right? And we're committed to our employees and training them in those new skill sets, right? You talked earlier about people that are on the floor manufacturing, maybe they don't have the 4-year degree, but now they're faced with this automated screen and all these controls and whatnot that they need to become familiar with. We're making that commitment to our team members, right, to provide that training. So even if they're on that floor, they're growing their skill set, all right, even though we are moving and, and making process improvements.
Always innovating, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Rachel, I think you had something as well.
Yeah, no, so I absolutely echo that. I don't think anyone should be scared of automation. It should be a definite perk all around, right? So it's how do we augment and improve the work that people do using AI and automation, especially in medical device and in pharmaceutical manufacturing. So what we're hearing from members is that skilled labor is never going to go away. You can bring in all the automation you want. There will never, in this lifetime, they believe there will never be less need for employees to do that work. But I also think it's all about how you spin it and how you explain. If you scare your employees by bringing in a new piece of software, a new machine, and you say, great, you're now going to be trained to just use this and use and push these buttons, they get a little frightened. They hear, I better start beefing up my resume. I better start looking somewhere else. If you go to them and say, we have this piece of technology that is going to make your job easier. It's going to give you 30% of your time back. It's going to allow you to be home at this hour and pick up your kids or be able to be flexible with your schedule. It's going to give you all these perks. So we want you to become the person that knows the most about this piece of equipment. What was it, NASA, when they went and transitioned from hand computers to computers, right? The people who knew how to run those systems were the people who were taking the job forward. So if you can harness the technology and make your employees more productive, more effective, and feel better about their work, that's what you want to be doing and using AI for.
Love it. Well, we talked a lot about retention. Let's go back to some of the basics and ask you all how you're actually finding people. Is anyone having success with employment services websites? How are you actually reaching out and identifying people in the first place? And, we've got a wide range here from manufacturing to scientists and engineers.
I mean, LinkedIn's become our primary source for recruiting as a tool. So that is where most of our effort goes. We have some other recruiting tools that we use, but that is, definitely jumped to the forefront. We have an internal group that does most of our recruiting. We also use agencies. We use contract corp to corp vendors. So we really use everything at our disposal right now because the need is great and no stone unturned.
Daria, Dan?
We at Unipak also use Indeed for a lot, but then a few minutes ago, we asked a question about the person who switched 6 jobs in the past 2 years, and we're kind of feeding that with the Indeed. We're stealing people who were already in the industry and we're giving them $20,000 more than the previous employer, and that's the person who jumped 6 jobs in 2 years. It's easy, it's accessible, the information is there. I myself do it, but we're also fueling this fire using it. Employment services, for some of our general labor positions, we use some services. They at least are doing the background checks. We're able to bring them in a period of time, see if we like them, see if we want to move forward. Word of mouth is great. We offer bonuses. If someone can refer someone in the last 90 days, we'll offer them a bonus for doing that. We have one employee who's found us 6 employees in the past 9 months and is actually turning into a nice little side hustle.
Wow. I love that story.
That's
All right,
good,
what's
Dan.
Wes doing? How are they reaching out?
That's good.
We have our internal team that does recruiting. We do use agencies. We do these employee referral, pretty much what the other gentlemen have said as well. One thing that, we are pushing for, we've had an intern program in the past, and that intern program has really given us the opportunity to identify those that Wes really would like to retain, in the future as an employee. So we also think that that's another great tool for us to use when trying to go and really get the talent to remain with West. So, and I think the intern program, the key with our intern program is, I know a lot of times people think, okay, I'm coming in and I'm just going to go and file for someone. Granted, we're past filing, but they're thinking they're doing maybe just some busy work. One of the commitments we have with our intern program is that they're working on a project. And at the end of the internship, we do what we call it's an intern fair, where they have to go and make a poster on the project they worked on. And then that people in the company walk around, ask the interns what they worked on, learn more about their project. So it really gives them the opportunity to go and share what they've learned. They're set up so that we can make that LinkedIn connection with them. We just scan our, the code. And really, I think that that's a great way to try and attract and retain, employees for the future.
I love that. That's an idea I'm lodging in my brain, because you're basically sending your interns off, whether they end up with you or not, with a built-in set of contacts that they've made and made it easy for them. And that poster goes right on their CV. So that's great.
Susan, I'll jump in. That kind of feeds into a question that's popped up in the Q&A that's kind of relevant. As somebody who works with graduates with PhDs and master's degrees, but they are struggling to get in without that work experience. And they're wondering if there's any suggestions from the panel about how they can actually improve their likelihood of getting into a company and really getting that experience when a lot of times they don't have it, they just have the degrees in place.
It's a great question. And I have heard that from interns and college grads who feel like they go through an automated system. We're all talking about this personal connection, but they're not getting answers necessarily from these online systems. So yeah, I'd love any comments on how do new graduates break in?
I think it depends too where they are. You have to be where the jobs are. So it's going to be really tricky if you've graduated and are in an area where the jobs that you're looking for just aren't available. So try to be as proactive as possible about finding where those jobs are. The other thing is utilizing
geographically.
Yes, yeah. I just mean geographically. It's pretty hard, to break into things if it's not nearby where you are, right? So it's a tough one to start. But I would say utilize organizations like MassMEDIC and PDE, right? We have a job board where we post hundreds of member jobs every month for free, right? These are folks who have reached out to us and said, we're looking for X, Y, and Z. Can you recommend candidates? And I have candidates reach out to me directly and say, Rachel, I see that you know somebody at this organization. Try to get that warm LinkedIn intro if you can. There are always people that are willing to help if you ask, but make the ask very specific. I see that you know this person, they have this job posted, and can you write them this note? I will say yes to that every time, right? I will never say no. And there are lots of people out there willing to do that too. So use your network as much as you can and use other people's network. So anyone on the call, feel free to share my LinkedIn information and tell them to link in with me, and then tell them to look through the people that I know, the jobs that are listed on MassMEDIC's website, and I will make intros to anyone that I can.
And I would also say, especially regionally, go out of your way to go to, if there's industry events that have a career fair component to them, which I know our company will attend those and will actively be looking to talk to folks with experience or right out of school or a master's degree. And that it's same way. It's the same way to build a connection with somebody in the organization to kind of get through the whatever that invisible door is that might be blocking your resume from getting through. So yeah, be proactive. I've recently been to a couple and they've been pretty well attended by hiring companies, some of these career fairs at industry events.
People will give you a job, not a resume gives you a job, right? So that's what I've always heard. I think anybody on this call would help anybody who's on this webinar and would make a connection where possible, but it's got to be personal. And just don't hesitate. The sending of a resume through a portal is never going to get you the job you're looking for. It's got to be somebody advocating for you. And that's just a little more getting out person to person, whether it is through LinkedIn, as Rachel said, or as Ray is talking about, getting there in person.
I would say just one note, because I do get some of it. LinkedIn is awesome. Do LinkedIn with context. If you're going to link to somebody you don't really know, give some context, a little bit about yourself. You do get some. It looks great. Here's my LinkedIn request from this person that seems wonderful, but there's really no context for it. It's hard to know what to do with that.
Yeah. Daria, Dan, any suggestions for new PhDs, new grads coming into the industry? We're talking about not being able to find people, and we've got this really fascinating question.
I would say networking with as many people in the industry as possible. I agree. Your resume does not get you the job.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the issues today is we utilize so many automated sites for uploading resumes. And when we're looking for jobs, they're trying to get those keywords, right? So if you don't have the right keywords, no one's going to look at you. So really having somebody inside to advocate for you is definitely a plus. I also think that oftentimes those in graduate programs or just in college in general have the opportunity to join organizations as a student, all right? Get those student organization memberships, make those connections within the groups. There's PDE, there's PDA out there, there's HBA, there's so many organizations that you can get as a student to get your foot in, make those connections and further your career. But I do think it is all about making the connections.
Yeah, anybody on this call who wants to reach out, there are a number of organizations, Rachel, in the Boston area, here in Philadelphia, that are all about pharma, life sciences, and anything connected. So we can definitely make connections for you to those organizations, which all have student rates and are very interested in having young people participate. It's hard walking into a room not knowing people, but it's critical. And we are about at an hour. I'm going to ask the panel for their kind of biggest takeaway in 30 seconds for either retention or recruitment over these last 2 years. And then we're going to wrap this up.
I'll go first. One thing I realized is no matter what the size of the company, we all have the same battles.
Yes.
Industries, different marketplaces, we're all experiencing the same thing. I did like some of the creative approaches I heard today. I have some notes written down. I'm going to try to implement some things, but we're all in the same battle.
Ray, how about you?
I would say there's we did talk a lot about connectivity, then we talked a lot about the transient nature of the work. I think it's just building a strong enough relationship with your team and your employees to have that honest conversation about what they're looking for, what they're trying to get out of the organization, and vice versa. And then you can work together to make it work. That one size doesn't fit all, right? So you're going to have folks that are going to be there for 2 years, folks that might say, generally, I'd like to be here for 15 years. And they come with different sets of rules and expectations as far as, how you work with those employees. I think that's fine. So I think building that honest communication is key.
Thank you. Daria.
I think really, over the past few years is flexibility. All right. We've had to change the way we do business. Our work environment has changed, has given the challenges we've faced. From a personal perspective, as far as retaining my team members, it is about the communication. I advocate for my team. I let my team know that I'm there for them. I want to support them, but I also want to give them a voice. And the way I do that is I invite leadership to come to our weekly meetings. Let my team, hear what leadership has to say, and the leadership hear what the concerns are for my team. I think the key thing, though, is really just investing in your team members. I'm just a big proponent of any company's biggest asset are their employees. So let's invest in them. Let's make the work experience, the work environment, something that they want to come to every day. All right. Invest in their development, invest in their growth, and work with them, and just keep those lines of communication open.
Well, thank you all very much. Rachel, I want to thank MassMEDIC for sponsoring this alongside the PDE. And I'm going to give you the final words because you've had a lot of great ideas today, and we really appreciate your being part of this. What's your greatest takeaway?
I would just say, there's so much. So offense versus defense, be proactive instead of reactive. Check out what each organization and state has to offer. I will say, I'm going to make a small plug for Massachusetts because Massachusetts is a wonderful place to be and live, but there are a number of programs like our Y MedTech program, which is being proactive and gathering stories from around the globe about why people are in life sciences to encourage others to get involved, but also looking at things like the Mass Life Sciences Center, which provides intern reimbursement. So if you're a company that's thinking about being in Massachusetts, there's a lot of perks. If you're an employee, you should definitely try to be in Massachusetts as well. And anything that we can do to help, we'll absolutely do it. Any events in Massachusetts, if we're hosting it, if we know the people hosting it, you're a student, if you're a job seeker, you're out of work, there's no cost. We'll make sure you get in. So don't hesitate to ask for those things.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. It's been a really lively discussion on a tough subject. We appreciate everybody's input and participation, and enjoy the rest of your week.
All right, thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody,
Thank you.
for your time. Very much appreciated on behalf of the PDE. And obviously, thank you, Susan, for moderating, Rachel for setting it up, and Daria, Ray, and Dan, thank you. And from the rest of the PDE board, we thank you.
All right, everybody, have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.